Good afternoon and welcome to the second hour of BNC Live. I'm Tishani Wetlow. A staggering report from the National Equity Atlas shows more than $16 billion is owed in rent. Despite Congress setting aside $46 billion in rental assistance, only about $5 billion has actually been given out. The money being distributed differently in every state, and it can be hard for renters who need the money to find their way through the application process. Some renters are unaware the money even exists.
Sleeplessness, it's a lot.
My inner voice is me yelling, screaming, trying to be like, what I'm gonna do, what I'm gonna do, what I'm gonna do.
Yeah, and all this coming at a time that the federal unemployment benefits have ended this week, adding to the struggles of people being unable to pay their rent. All right, and joining us now to discuss more on that is Michael Thurman. He joins us to talk about the Federal Rental Assistance Program. He is the Chief Executive Officer in DeKalb County, Georgia, and he knows firsthand of the difficulties of distributing the money. It's a pleasure to have you back, sir. The last time we spoke, DeKalb County was one of many municipalities having issues distributing the funds. How's the county doing now?
Well, we're continuing to distribute funds at a record pace. Just this past week, we broke the $1 million mark for a weekly amount of distribution. But more importantly, we, through Judge Osher Jackson, issued a local moratorium. The biggest challenge, of course, is that the CDC moratorium has lapsed. But here in DeKalb County, we have a countywide moratorium that's in place until the end of this month.
Got it. So, Mr. Thurman, you have a county-wide moratorium, but not a statewide. Is that correct?
That's correct. We're the only county in Georgia with a moratorium, and this will allow us to continue to work with tenants and landlords to distribute additional resources to keep people in their homes during this very significant spike in COVID-19 cases.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, on top of unemployment benefits ending and this eviction moratorium also ending, we're dealing with the spike in COVID cases across the country. And this is also at a time that kids are heading back to school. So what do you say to people who live outside of DeKalb County and they don't have that same protection as your constituents?
Well, there are many nonprofits and other community-based organizations, legal aid societies, exercise and access all the resources available to you. Do not lose hope in this. As you stated, this is overlapping crises. As a former labor commissioner, I understand the challenge that unemployed citizens are facing right now with the loss of benefits. And we've had a large number, several thousand residents from Louisiana who evacuated here to DeKalb County. But through faith, we'll get through this. We can't give up. We can't lose faith. And for those at the local, federal, and state level, despite the challenge, we have to do everything we can to support our citizens who are in need.
Absolutely, and I don't want it to go unnoticed. You said you've given out $1 million in 1 week. Congratulations on that. That's a huge accomplishment. Can you tell us how many families you've helped so far?
So far, we've been able to help 1,447 different families in DeKalb County. We're continuing to increase that number. We have another 2,600 applications pending, and we've been able to develop, I think, a positive relationship with landlords. I think that's the underappreciated reality of the tenant landlord assistance program across this nation. Is just not successful unless you can get support and cooperation from landlords. And we've been able to do that, and I think it's contributed significantly to our recent success.
Yes, and 2,000 applications, sir. Can you just briefly walk us through the process of going through each one and then providing the necessary funding for each family?
That's a great question. I appreciate you answering it. Many have appreciated how complicated this particular strategy is. We've actually hired some 60 new employees just to manage the application process. Our state court clerk, Ms. Javon Hicks, is the person overseeing it. It's a matter of getting various documents. The Treasury Department has streamlined it to some extent, but it's still labor intensive. because frankly, many of the tenants just don't have the documents needed to ensure that the money is going into appropriate places. Also, there's a challenge when landlords are unable to communicate with tenants to get the information because a landlord can apply as well as a tenant. But by opening the lines of communication, by helping people to mediate their differences, we've been able to move forward, and we're going to continue to do it until we exhaust every single penny that's been appropriated to our county.
And how, so another question, you mentioned documents not having the necessary or appropriate ones. Just to quote you, what are the appropriate documents that one needs?
Well, first, you must have a lease or some other document to show that you are a legally authorized tenant. There's also information that you can now self-attest to that you lost your job because of COVID. Other information about family and so forth. If you have utility bills, uh, you can present those bills as well. So it's an ongoing list. But I want to give credit to the Biden administration who've gone to great pains to expedite and this particular application process. What many local governments found that it was just so complicated in the initial weeks and months of the initiative that it made it difficult to get the resources to the people who needed it the most. That has changed, and that has resulted in millions and millions of dollars flowing into landlords and protecting the rights of tenants to maintain shelter for themselves and their families.
Right now, states are struggling to get money from the federal rental assistance program to those who are facing the threat of eviction. $46 billion has been put into the rental program, but the Treasury Department says at the end of July, only about $5 billion of that 46 has been actually sent to renters. The pace is starting to pick up, but not quick enough, especially for those who are facing homelessness. All right, joining us now is someone who is very familiar with the pace this money is being distributed. Michael Thurman, he is with us. He is the CEO of DeKalb County. It's such a pleasure to have you here, sir. So I want to start with, you mentioned that you wanted to thank the Biden administration prior to us going to break about them rolling out the necessary funding. My question to you is 57% of tenants and nearly 40% of landlords say they had no idea that this rental assistance program was even available. That's according to an Urban Institute survey. Do you think the program could have been better implemented?
Well, Ms. Whitlow, yes, actually, there's always opportunities to improve performance and effectiveness. But at the same time, we're dealing with a novel virus. There's never been an attempt at any level to provide this level of support to renters in the history of the United States of America. It was done in an expedited manner. Consequently, there was a learning curve. Local jurisdictions had to actually create, there are 400 rental assistance programs in the country. Each jurisdiction, each city, county who received the funding had to set up an individual program, hire staff, train staff, enter into contracts. What I think we underestimated was the length of time it would take to stand up these initiatives and then operationalize them at a high level of efficiency. That was a mistake, but at the same time, we are where we are right now, and we just have to continue to push forward at the federal, state, and local level to get as much money out as possible. Just think about it. You mentioned it earlier, Ms. Whitlow. You have the real eviction crisis looming, spike in Delta variant numbers. All of these realities, and now down on the Gulf Coast, Hurricane Ida, all of these things, fires out in California and floods in the Northeast. We cannot afford to have millions of Americans thrown into the streets in the midst of these overlapping crises.
Yeah, and Mr. Thurman, thank you for bringing that up again, because you mentioned earlier in the conversation that families, displaced families from Louisiana, also migrated to your state, correct? Is any of this money being used to assist them?
Well, on Saturday, we are hosting a monthly food distribution. We've created a relationship with farmers in South Georgia where we purchase fresh fruits and vegetables and healthy protein and distribute it to families who are fighting food insecurity in DeKalb County. This Saturday, we'll be distributing over 4,100 boxes, and we are inviting the Cobb County families who are hosting friends and relatives from the Louisiana coast to come and be guests and to get food and other items needed to support themselves. We're doing everything we can. 3 Saturdays ago, we hosted a vaccination event. We vaccinated over 2,500 residents in DeKalb County on a Saturday morning between 8 and 4 p.m. That idea that people of color in particular are resistant or will not get vaccinated is just not true. We had an event, we had it in the community. We enlisted the services of Dikembe Mutombo, the legendary shot blocker, who was the voice and the face of the event. So there we have to be innovative, creative, and not to grow weary in your good doings.
Yeah, congratulations to you for getting 2,500 people vaccinated. Since we're on this topic, are you concerned, Mr. Thurman, with families hosting family members from out of state, folks living in multi-generational homes? We're still in the midst of a pandemic that's currently raging with cases from old to young. Are you concerned that your county may see a surge in cases?
Oh, absolutely. And we are seeing a surge, not just in my county, but all across the state of Georgia. We have our ICU beds at more than 95, 96% capacity. We've seen a sharp spike in infections among children. And we just opened school about 2 weeks ago. So this is an ongoing rolling crisis. Of course, I'm concerned, but we have to continue to follow the science. Wear the mask, and, sanitize, wash your hands, remain distant however possible. But most importantly, to get the vaccination. And what I'm learning and what I've learned is that we can't just buy into the public narrative that people of color will not get vaccinated. It's just not true. You have to have the right messenger, tweak the message, create convenient locations, go to where people are, and try as best you can to answer the question I was asked. And we using the $100 incentive. We were the first county in the state to provide a $100 debit card incentive for vaccinations. It's proved extremely successful. And so just do everything you can to try to save one life if possible.
All right, Mr. Thurman, I got to wrap, but just give the folks listening the website where they can go and fill out the form to receive some of that federal aid if they are facing eviction. I want to bring it back to that.
Well, come to our DeKalb County website. It's www.dekalbcountygeorgia.gov. Come here, and all the information, not just about the rental assistance, but also about vaccinations, about all the other things we're doing, job training to help people. And I want to thank you, Ms. Whitlow, for staying focused on this.
Thank you, Mr.
You've done
Thurman.
an amazing job to educate, but more importantly, inspire people like me to work harder and do a better job and hopefully be a little bit more successful.
I appreciate that, Mr. Thurman, and we appreciate you for taking the time out of your busy day to join us on BNC Live, sir.